talking about integers. And before we can start any of that, we need to just figure out what an integer is. So an integer is any positive or negative whole number. So that would be like -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. And if you think about integers, we use them all the time. We use them in temperature, when it's really cold out, when it's really hot out. We use them a lot for money. If we lose money, that's like a negative number. If we gain money, that's like making money. That's like a positive number. So integers are used all over the place, not just in math, but all the time in the real world. First of all, if we want to look at numbers, we can look at them on a number line. And sometimes we need to be able to compare numbers to see which one is bigger or which one is smaller. And now we know that if we're looking at positive numbers, the further we go to the right, the bigger the number gets. When we're looking at negative numbers, it's the opposite. The further we go to the left, the smaller the number gets. And for me, the easiest way to remember that is like with temperature. The bigger the number is, if it's a negative number, the colder it is. So if we were outside and it was -10 degrees, that's warmer out than if it was -20 degrees. That's backwards than if we were positive, where we would say 20 is bigger than 10. So if we were to put these two numbers, -2 and -12 on the number line, -2 would be right here, just a little bit less than 0, and -12 would be down here a little bit further. So we would say that -2 is bigger than -12. We can try another number. We can try -10 and -19. So here's 0 again on the number line. And we can think about it just like we did the last one of temperature, and which one would be colder outside. Which number is further away from 0? And obviously -19 is further away from 0. That one's colder, so that number is smaller. So that would be down here. And -10 would be closer to 0. That number is bigger. Now let's say we have a whole bunch of numbers and we need to put all of them in order from least to greatest. The first thing that I always start with is whatever number is closest to 0. So in this case, we have 0. And now the easiest thing for me to do is let's work with all those positive numbers first, because those are usually easier because we've worked a lot with positives. So we have a 13, a 25, and a 42. And I'm going to start with what's closest to 0 and then get bigger. So the first one would be 13. Then we would have 25. Remember, we're going from least to greatest. And then the biggest of all of them would be 42. So now let's work on the other side. We're going to work on our negatives. So first of all, what number is closest to 0? Or which number, if we're thinking of temperature, would be the warmest of those three negative numbers, which would be -16. And now if we just keep moving down, we're going to keep thinking about those negative numbers. They're getting smaller. It's getting colder out. So we have -21 and -31 left. And next would be -21. That's the next coolest temperature. And then we end with -31. Another way that we can think of negative numbers is like money. And positive numbers is like how much money we have in our bank account, how much money we have. And negative numbers is like how much money we owe people. The more money we have, the less money we have for ourselves, the smaller those numbers get. So that's just another way to think about it. Now we're going to talk about something called absolute value. And absolute value is just the distance a number is away from 0. And this number will always be a positive number. Looking a lot at what we were just doing on the last screen. But basically it's looking at our number line again, looking at 0, and just taking any number and looking at just how far away from 0 it is. Not worrying about positive numbers, negative numbers, adding or subtracting. We just want to know how far away it is from 0. So -12 is down here. How far is -12 away from 0? It's 12. 12 units away from 0. So the absolute value of -12 is 12. The next one is 3. So here's 3. The absolute value of 3, how far is it away from 0, is 3. The next one, absolute value of 8, it's moving down here a little bit further. How far is 8 away from 0? That would be 8 units. And we can keep going with these ones. It's the same thing. How far is negative 54 away from 0? That would be 54. How far is 0 away from 0? Well, 0. It's already at 0. So we could continue on with those other ones, but I think you get the idea. So we're just going to look at a couple more ideas. The next one is the idea of an opposite. And an opposite is just two numbers that are an equal distance away from 0. And when we add those two numbers together, they'll always equal 0, or they'll cancel each other out. This is very important when we're adding and subtracting integers. So, looking at our number line again, here's 0. Here's negative 13. That's the first one we're working with. And I want to know what is the opposite of negative 13. So what other number is exactly 13 units away from 0? And obviously, if you're going to the other side of 0, we know that that would be 13. So the opposite of negative 13 is 13. For 6, here would be 6 over here. 6 is 6 units away from 0. What other number is 6 units away from 0? And obviously that would be negative 6. So opposites are just a number and a negative number and its absolute value, or just the opposite of each other. Hence the term opposite. So the opposite of negative 3 would be 3. The opposite of 19 is negative 19, and so on. And like we said above, anytime we're adding two negative or an opposite together with each other, we'll always get 0. If I'm at negative 4, right here, and I add on 4, so I move to the right 4 spots, I'll end up at 0. If I start at 13, and I add on negative 13, so that's like backing up 13 spaces, I'll end up at 0. Very important concept for adding and subtracting fractions, integers. And this was just what we did in class. It's some games that you'd be able to try. But that is our introduction to integers.